And now to the boiling Israeli politics. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu softened his judicial reforms. But this doesn't look like enough for the protesters who continue to demand a rollback of the government's legal reforms. We tell you more.
For weeks, Israelis have been on the streets. They are protesting against the government's so-called judicial reforms, on which the country is sharply divided. Businesses are planning to move out, and sections of the defense forces are up in arms. There are people within the Israeli Prime Minister's own party who believe these moves to clip the powers of the judiciary under the pretext of reform have gone too far. The Biden administration has expressed its discomfort over the reforms, and that is perhaps why Netanyahu has finally decided to soften his stand. On Monday, the Israeli Prime Minister announced he would postpone most of the bill apart from legislation shaking up Israel's system for selecting judges. The government aims to pass the judicial selection bill before the Passover holiday that begins on April 5th. The rest of the reform package will not be voted on until the next Knesset session begins at the end of April. However, protests continue across Israel. Some of the protesters say the far-right coalition was undermining Israel's democracy and taking away a feeling of freedom.
I came with my friends here to Tel Aviv to demonstrate against what is called reform, against everything, every institution of our country, and I hope we will defend our democracy.
The opposition is also relentless. Opposition leaders have said they would still challenge the key legislation in the Supreme Court. The court case could set the stage for a major constitutional showdown in the country.
The moment the change to the Judicial Appointments Committee passes, we will appeal against it at the Supreme Court. The base for the appeal will be simple. If this law passes, Israel stops being a democratic state. We will not allow this to happen. The liberal camp is simply unwilling to live in a non-democratic state.
The uproar over the government's move against the judiciary has plunged Israel into one of its worst domestic crises. An attempt by Israel's ceremonial president to defuse the crisis through an alternative legal reform has so far been unsuccessful. After consulting leaders across the political spectrum, Isaac Herzog proposed a framework for compromise, which key opposition leaders accepted as a basis for negotiations. But Netanyahu turned it down, reportedly because his hardline Justice Minister Yariv Levin threatened to resign and bring down the coalition if the Prime Minister opened the door to talks. Israel's far-right Finance Minister says the judicial overhaul will strengthen democracy in all its aspects.
I'm telling you with full responsibility that the judicial reform will not, God forbid, undermine democracy, rights and freedom. All this is handmaid's tale. Brainwashing campaign is ridiculous, ridiculous and ridiculous.
So is Netanyahu saving the coalition or himself? Well, critics say it's all for himself and to stay in power. And the law ratified on Thursday proves the same. The ratified law now limits the circumstances in which a prime minister can be removed. This is despite worries voiced by experts that it may be meant to shield Netanyahu from the law taking its course in his corruption trial. With 15 years in power, serving as Israel's prime minister thrice, Netanyahu seems to be in trouble now, more than ever. And the relentless protests from all the sections of society are proving to be his biggest test yet.